Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 6, text number 33. This chapter is entitled Conversation between Narad and Vyasadeva. Please repeat. Pragayataha Sva Vyani Tirtha Padam Pada Priya Sravaha Ahuta Iva Me Shigram Darshanam Yati Chetasi Pragayata Swavyani Pragayata Swavyani Tirthapada Priyasravaha Ahuta Iva Me Shrigram Darshanam Yati Chetasi Pragayata Swabhiyani Tirtha Pada Priyasravaha Ahuta Iva Me Shrigram Darshanam Yati Chetasi Pragayataha. Thus singing Svabhyani, own activities. Tirthapada, the Lord whose lotus feet are the source of all virtues or holiness. Priya Shravaha, pleasing to hear. Ahuta, called for. Eva, just like. Me, to me. Shigram, very soon. Darshanam, sight. Yati, appears. Chetasi, on the seat of the heart. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. Purport: the absolute personality of Godhead is not different from his transcendental name, form, pastimes, and the sound vibrations thereof. As soon as a pure devotee engages himself in the pure devotional service of hearing, chanting, and remembering the name, fame, and activities of the Lord, at once he becomes visible to the transcendental eyes of the pure devotee by reflecting himself on the mirror of the heart by spiritual television. Therefore, a pure devotee who is related with the Lord in loving transcendental service can experience the presence of the Lord at every moment. It is a natural psychology in every individual case that a person likes to hear and enjoy his personal glories enumerated by others. That is a natural instinct, and the Lord, being also an individual personality like others, is not an exception to this psychology, because psychological characteristics visible in the individual souls are but reflections of the same psychology in the Absolute Lord. The only difference is that the Lord is the greatest personality of all and absolute in all his affairs. If therefore the Lord is attracted by the pure devotees' chanting of his glories, there is nothing astonishing. Since he is absolute, he can appear himself in the picture of his glorification, the two things being identical. Srila Narad chants the glorification of the Lord not for his personal benefit, but because the glorifications are identical with the Lord. Narad Muni penetrates into the presence of the Lord by the transcendental chanting. We can repeat this translation responsively, please. The Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. Om Jnana Timanam Dasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unminitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhete Gunim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. So there is another beautiful verse, and while I can recall it, Srimbata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridhanta Stohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, who is the personality of Godhead and the Paramatma or Super Soul dwelling in everyone's heart, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the hearts of his devotees who have developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves completely purifying and transcendental. So, actually, before we even speak, I wanted to thank Jasoda Dulal, Prabhu, and Ramila, who's been organising from offshore in Mayapur by the wonders of modern technology, and of course Radharani, and Janava Mata, who I think arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. Is Janet? I haven't sort of scanned around, but just now. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, I just wanted to express gratitude, because gratitude is very important, and all other devotees who I may not know so well, but who have been instrumental in organising behind the scenes, and of course for everyone who's travelled from long distances from the North Island, Gora and Jamuna, and of course Trivikram, you and your wife and so many others come from different places. So I heard a nice expression recently about gratitude, and some of you may know it's an old saying that there's no more wretched a person in the universe than an ungrateful person. So of course we don't want to go into that category of wretchedness, but and just to be here is wonderful, back in the beautiful South Island of New Zealand, with catching up with so many dear devotee friends and seeing all the bright faces of all the new devotees. It's an absolute privilege to be here, and quite astonishing actually, having Kirtan this morning and actually seeing all their lordships coming and making their homes here last night and this morning being worshipped with great devotion. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience here in South Canterbury. So who would have thought? But here we all are. It's very wonderful. So we'll try to just discuss a little philosophy. Of course, it's always wonderful, very enlivening to speak, of course, for Krishna's pleasure, as this verse is, Srila Prabhupada so nicely fluffing out the cotton. He describes that we can take one verse from any of the glorious Vedic literatures, and then just like you get a piece of cotton and you fluff it out, so many strands come off from a ball of cotton. So similarly, any one verse of especially Srimad Bhagavatam and other glorious Vaishnava literatures, we can draw out so many wonderful deep understandings. And of course it's It's very wonderful to glorify Krishna in this way. Another beautiful verse. Matchita matkata prana bodhayanta parasparam tayantas chamam nityam tuschanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great bliss and satisfaction, enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is, of course, just part of the wonderful reciprocation that bhakti yogis and bhakti yoginis experience. That wonderful happiness which can only be experienced by those on the devotional path. And of course, all of us at some point in our lives, we have experienced that sweet, sweet nectarian happiness. Especially, I'm sure we can all remember our first contact with Krishna consciousness, and what an amazing feeling it was that yes, this, despite our sincere efforts to find happiness here in this material world, we quite often came up short, so to speak, dissatisfied, unhappy. But then all of a sudden, we came in contact with Krishna consciousness and we experienced something we never experienced before. And that's Krishna's mercy. And he gives us such a taste. And we go, yes, I'm going to take up this process. This is wonderful. And we do. And we take it up with great enthusiasm. After getting that initial thundercloud of mercy from Hari Gurus and Vaishnavas. But then perhaps there's a time when our devotion is challenged a little bit. Our bhakti becomes a little... We realise, in a way, it's like Krishna withdrawing that mercy for a little while. And there's very good reason for that, because actually Krishna doesn't want to be taken cheaply. Nobody wants to be taken cheaply in any form of relationship in this material world. Everyone wants to have dignity and be respected and not to be taken for granted, you could say. So Krishna is non-different. He's the supreme person, the original person. And we all, of course, have a ecstatic, blissful relationship with him. And of course, the path of bhakti, there are definitely challenges. And as they say, any victory is all the more sweeter when there's been a hard struggle, isn't it? Anyone who's been through university knows that. To get a degree at university, it takes many years of hard struggle, but then on graduation day, all those late nights of cramming or missing out on parties, which young people, of course, hate to do, in order to achieve that goal is all the more sweeter. And, of course, Srila Prabhupada was not only fearless, but incredibly determined to establish Krishna consciousness in the Western world, which was the order he'd been given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Prabhupada had to fight many obstacles in order to achieve that. And of course, one famous, those who are familiar with the Hare Krishna movement and its history know that one of the biggest obstacles was Prabhupada securing from one very devious businessman, the infamous Mr. Nair in Bombay, who was trying to cheat Prabhupada out of a parcel of land that Prabhupada had put a deposit down on in Bombay to build a beautiful temple for Radha Rasa Bihari. It's interesting because Prabhupada actually saw that piece of land even before coming to the Western world. Prabhupada was coming and going. He was coming to Bombay specifically to secure free passage on the Jaladuta from Sumati Muraji, which he did. And it was while he was on one of those visits to her bungalow in Juhu Beach that Prabhupada saw this magnificent parcel of land for sale right on the Arabian Sea. Any of us who have been and stayed at Hare Krishna land in Juhu Beach, Bombay, know, magnificent temple. So Prabhupada was thinking, even before coming to the Western world, what a beautiful piece of land to build a temple for Krishna. But at that stage, he had no disciples, practically, and no finances. But it was like there's this competition between Krishna and his devotees. Krishna's pure devotees, they're always trying to see Krishna glorified. And similarly, Krishna is always trying to glorify his devotees in this world. And of course, there was a very, very difficult struggle, because Mr. Nair was a crooked businessman, and he had not only was trying to cheat Prabhupada out of the land, but he'd also taken deposits of other people. And of course, everyone knows in the Indian legal system, is money can be tied up in the courts for 20, 30, 40 years without any resolution. So this is what Mr. Nair was doing. So anyway, there was a hard struggle, but ultimately, and it was actually in Auckland that Prabhupada got the phone call. And rarely Srila Prabhupada took phone calls. He would generally take correspondence in letter form, very occasionally. This is way back even before fax machines, what to speak of email. Occasionally Prabhupada would take a telex message like that, telegram. But anyway, when it was in Gribblehurst Road that the message came through from Giriraj Das Brahmachari at the time, later Giriraj Maharaj, of course, that Mr. Nair had passed away suddenly. After a short illness. But that resolved the situation anyway in Srila Prabhupada's favour and ISKCON's favour. But there was a hard struggle in order for Prabhupada to achieve that. And actually later on Prabhupada made peace with, or at least Mr. Nair's widow came and apologised to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, "Don't worry, everything's all right. I always saw you as my daughter. Everything is forgiven." And of course, magnificent temple was constructed. So this wonderful reciprocation is there, and of course, Jasoda Dulal Prabhu is making the theme of this festival, the Jagannath Family Festival, of course, the emphasis on kirtan, ecstatic kirtan. And when I heard Trivikram Prabhu was coming, when I first got word that this festival was becoming a reality, I thought, yes, because I was wondering what to do on my short summer vacation. And of course wanting to reconnect here in the South Island again. So, and of course Gitanjali Mataji, I think Divi Govinda was scheduled to come, but he has work commitments at the last minute. But still, this is a wonderful theme, the Kirtan, Sankirtan movement. Of course, is such a wonderful, sublime and appropriate form of self-realization and God-realization in this often wicked age of Kali. So, Krishna is known as the Lord of the Threes. He's also the Lord of the Trees. But, and there's one category of threes which I wanted to mention, but perhaps for a little interaction, can some of you give me some other examples of how Krishna is described in Srimad Bhagavatam as the Lord of the Threes? What are some groups of threes, Prabhus, Matajis, you can think of that Krishna is the Lord of? Yeah, the three guna avatars, you mean, Trivikram? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and of course Krishna expands himself as Lord Vishnu, absolutely, yes. Anyone else?
The twin Arjuna trees.
Well, they're twins, we're thinking threes, but good analogy, yeah. Twin Arjuna trees. But groups of 3. Yeah. Anyone, ladies? Fantastic. Yes, 3 modes of material nature. Thank you. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. Yes.
3 forms of Vishnu, Mahavishnu, and Chiradakshara-Vishnu.
Yes, absolutely. Garbhodakshara-Vishnu. Yeah, another good group of 3s. Any others? All right, that's good. If you think of any, you can. But there are another group of 3s, and we often hear that devotees. There's 2 classes of devotees. But actually, there's 3. There's liberated souls, jiva muktas, and there's conditioned souls, jiva buddhas. But there's also, it's described, there are souls who are on the path towards liberation, and hopefully that's all of us. Yeah. So. Of course, some of you may already be liberated. I'm not sure, perhaps. But anyway, we know there are devotees, aspiring transcendentalists. And I have a good friend who's a very scholarly devotee who lives near New Govardhan, and he always, whenever I have the audacity to refer to myself or even others as Vaishnavas or devotees, he likes to correct and say aspiring devotees, Prabhu. Aspiring devotees. Because we know Vaishnava or devotee is not a casual, not a cheap thing. And of course even Prabhupada mentioned in that. So we are aspiring. Absolutely. And of course we're on the path. And that other beautiful verse in Bhagavatam that describes that the spiritual master is like the captain of the ship. The actual ship is this delightful material body that we have, which is a suitable vessel, unlike the other 8,400,000, or at least 8 million other forms of life. I think there's described there are, of course, many different varieties of human forms throughout the creation. But to get a human form of life is, of course, a wonderful opportunity, rarely achieved. So many other different species of life, but to get a human form of life is a rare opportunity. So it's a suitable vessel, and of course, having the captain of the ship, our wonderful spiritual masters in disciplic succession, and the wonderful verses of Vedic literature are like the favourable breezes which can actually very safely ply this human form of life across the great ocean of nescience or ignorance, especially in Kali Yuga. So we have to take advantage of all these wonderful attributes. There was an incident recently, or not, a few years ago now, near where we live at Byron Bay, where a fishing boat went down in the dead of night, and there were three fishermen on board. And actually, sadly, one of them didn't make it. He drowned at sea. But 2 of them did, and one of them swam in the darkness for many hours at night. The fishing boat was fishing just off Byron Bay, and of course any of you who've been to that part of Australia know there's a very famous lighthouse. It's the most easterly point of Australia. So when the ship went down, one of the deckhands, he managed to swim to shore, and he only made it because he just kept that Byron lighthouse in focus, and he just kept swimming and swimming until he got to the shore near the lighthouse. And then he raised the alarm, and somehow or other they found one of the other fishermen the next day. So it was a good example, a bit of a homegrown example of how if we always, in the turbulent age of Kali Yuga, if we just keep the lighthouse, Krishna's wonderful instructions as our guiding principle in life, then we can actually cross over this often the choppy waters. And of course we have to stay in the boat. Sometimes we jump out of the boat and we thrash around in the material world for a while, and then we get bruised and battered, and then we get back in the boat. We realise, that was much fun. I actually forgot. We have propensities, different energies of Krishna. We know propensity to be pulled down and then covered over again. Prapshipatmika Shakti and Avaranatmika Shakti. Way to remember that, if you'd like to remember it, Prapshipatmika means, literally P for pulling down. And then Avaranatmika Shakti means we get covered over. And we forget. We also have a tendency to forget. And of course, and we live in a very inky atmosphere. Of course, here in New Zealand, it's compared to other places in the world, especially in a very beautiful rural environment like we're experiencing here in South Canterbury for a few days. But other places, of course, I'm sure many of you live in big cities, and even the big cities of New Zealand, I'm sure, aren't immune, what to speak of other places in the world. It's a very contaminated atmosphere, sometimes described like ink, very inky. But if you are living in an inky atmosphere, of course, even more we have to keep pouring the amrit, the nectarian milk of the Surabhi cow instructions of Sri Krishna into our ear holes continuously. And if you're doing that, continuously pouring, you may have a glass in an inky atmosphere and there's a few droplets of ink dropping here and there, but if there's continuously milk being poured into that glass, then it'll just flush out all the nasty ink and continue to do that all the time. So that's, of course, why we're encouraged to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. First instruction, and very important. So one of our most wonderful, intimate and confidential associates of Krishna is Uddhava. And Uddhava's a wonderful personality. He's actually Krishna's cousin, so he's family. And he actually looks like Krishna, strikingly handsome, not as attractive as the Supreme Lord, but still. And he's also a member of the princely order. He's a Kshatriya, so he's vastly learned. And he's an advisor to Krishna. Just imagine, God, who is omniscient, knows everything, he actually takes advice. Uddhava was a member of the royal court in Dwarka. So Dwarka Puri, during Krishna's time, 5,000 years ago, a bustling city, so many persons coming and going, so much activity. Narada Muni, who we're reading about in this chapter, also from time to time coming to Dwarka as the ever-liberated transcendental spaceman that he is, and observing firsthand how Krishna is performing all these wonderful pastimes with his innumerable queens. In one palace, playing chess with Rukmini. In another palace, perhaps arranging the marriages of his wonderful children, and so on and so forth. Bringing the Parijata flower from the heavenly planets for Satyabhama, I believe. So many wonderful pastimes going on. So Uddhava is also there in the court, and Krishna is being offered so many wonderful presentations, priceless, the most opulent royal items of clothing, and sometimes he wears them once or twice, and then he gives them to Uddhava. He says, Uddhava, this would look nice on you. Why don't you wear this? And costly, the most exquisite, costly fragrances are being brought and offered to the Lord. So many wonderful pastimes. We know Sudama Brahmana coming with his very humble offering of some chipped rice. So much activity going on there. And of course Krishna asking Uddhava, you please sometimes, Uddhava, go to Vrindavan. Even initially when Krishna first left Vrindavan and went and resided in Mathura. And of course we know the pitiable scenes when all the residents of Vrindavan realized that Krishna and Balaram were actually leaving, throwing themselves in front of the Lord's chariot and refusing to let him go. So it sometimes appears that Krishna's a little hard-hearted with his devotees. There's this separation going on, so much so that Uddhava has to go back to Vrindavan, sometimes spend 3 months there, consoling the residents, narrating the wonderful pastimes that Krishna's performing in Dwarka, and cheering them up, so to speak. Sometimes when he arrives on the outskirts of Vrindavan, because he looks so much like Krishna, the residents become euphoric, ecstatic that Krishna's returned, but then they realise, oh, it's Uddhava. But they're still really happy to see Uddhava because he's bringing news of their beloved Sri Krishna, and he's going to spend time with them. So Uddhava's very proud of his own devotion, in the nicest possible way, proud. Just as Srila Prabhupada carried himself with so much dignity, he was immensely proud of his devotion to Krishna. Simultaneously, he was the most humble person. It sounds difficult to comprehend, but pure devotees experience that. They're the most humble personalities, personifying Trinadapi Sunichena, Torodapi Sahishnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtanaya Sadahari. But at the same time, they're extremely happy to travel about and glorify Krishna. So when Uddhava came to Vrindavan on one of these wonderful visits, he experienced that actually his own devotion for Krishna he felt was quite insignificant compared to the devotion of the residents of Vrindavan, especially the gopis. So much so, of course, we know that he prayed to take birth in the future as a humble clump of grass, so that the foot dust of the gopis especially could occasionally fall on his head as he resided there in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu, of course, himself glorified that devotion of the cowherd girlfriends of Sri Krishna, the gopis in Vrindavan, because they really gave up everything. They really gave up absolutely everything, even their so-called reputations, going in their spiritual bodies to be with Krishna in the dead of night. So, and of course, irrespective of their own happiness. On one occasion, of course, famous story that Sri Krishna had a headache, and he said the only thing that would cure his headache was the dust from the feet of his devotees. So certain devotees thinking this is not good, this is a great offence, Krishna having my foot dust on his head, not good. No, we can't agree to that. But the gopis unreservedly, yes, if that's going to cure Krishna's headache, let us go to hell innumerably. But if Krishna is happy and satisfied, that's all that matters. So that's, of course, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service, which is, of course, the highest pinnacle of existence for all of us. So, yes, we of course aspire for that. That's our aspiration. I'm not too sure what time Jasoda Dalal wants this class to finish, but I can... What's a good time? Give me I can... It's nearly 8:30 now, so what time should we... 8:30 is good. All right, so maybe that's enough for this morning. And but if anyone has a question, Prabhus or Mataji's, we can try and answer it. If we don't know the answer, we'll always put it out to everyone more learned than ourselves to try and answer it. Yes, Trivikram Prabhu.
So talking a little bit about the inky atmosphere analogy and how to keep pace of the material energy in our consciousness and our lives, and keep things flowing in. It seems also simultaneously we're dealing with our own particular karmic conditioning, our minds and all these things that seem to be not an external thing, sometimes it's an internal thing, and the endless banter of the mind while one chants one's japa, flood of material desires coming through, or thoughts, or so many things come from the mind, the platform of the mind. What sort of advice can you give us that would be a beacon of light that could give us hope that we can actually ultimately be victorious over the mind and our particular conditionings? So we have to enjoy this life, this lifetime, before we can expect that we'll have some respite from that.
Yes, did everyone hear Trivikram's question? Just, the mind, how to deal with our mind and all of its, all the noise that it makes, even when we're trying to perform our sadhana, we're dealing with the restless mind. And of course, Krishna acknowledges that in Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam hi manaha Krishna, or Arjuna, when Krishna describes all of the different yogic processes, and ultimately Arjuna does reject them, saying it, to conquer over the mind seems more difficult than to conquer the wind, the raging wind. But Krishna says it is possible by constant practice and by devotion. So, of course, we just have to practice as best we can, ignoring the mind, understanding that it's material. We have so much conditioning there, as you say, from past, but actually the mind can be our best friend if we don't forget this fact, that the mind that's controlled is actually our best friend. But the mind and the senses which are uncontrolled are actually our worst enemy. So it's very important to be constantly discriminating, and just to have intense desire to achieve that which in our heart of hearts we may always know is the perfection of existence. But it requires some austerity, and of course our austerity is we do have to learn to ignore, and of course chant very sincerely our japa, and of course find time, arrange our lives in such a way that, as I'm sure everyone's doing, even with all the other demands that come on us, especially in family life, there are so many responsibilities. One has to be dutiful, but one has to arrange one's life in such a way that one can inoculate oneself and give oneself a taste, and never forget where we've come from. I find that very helpful. Just never forget the place that we were once at, and of course realise that these bodies are very limited. Actually, watching Prananath's nice footage last night of, and that was the 1990s, and seeing some of our children who are no longer children, who are all grown up, and seeing Ariel as a young lad, and he and Haley are about to become parents if they haven't already become parents. And now he's 38 years old, he told me when we caught up. The changing bodies scenario, and we're going to leave these bodies, and we have enough memorial services at New Govardhan every year where we glorify, we celebrate the lives of great souls who are no longer with us, and that's going to happen to us, and hopefully everyone will say a few nice words about us too. But where are we going to go? We desperately want to. Actually, I don't know if we have any disciples here of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, but at New Govardhan. Any disciples here of Gaur Govinda Maharaj? Okay. So, I don't think Maharaj ever came to New Zealand, but he definitely came to Australia. And there are a lot of his disciples who live around New Govardhan, and some of them are very good friends of mine. And in the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami does describe that in order to achieve Krishna, you have to cry. You have to actually, not that we're, emotional, sentimental sahajiyas with, chili in the nostrils and in the eyeballs. No, we're not those sort of sahajiyas. But we do have to develop that ability to, that greed, that lolyam, that intense greed to achieve Krishna. Otherwise we will come back. And that's because we haven't actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur famously said, and Prabhupada referred to his spiritual master, very strict. That was one comment he made. My Guru Maharaj was very strict. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gave the example in the morning, you have to get a broomstick and beat the mind 100 times, wasn't it? And in the evening another 100 times with a shoe. So that's bang, 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 bang. Like, just so the mind knows who's actually the boss here. I'm sorry, my dear mind, but you're not the boss. I'm the soul, and you're going to actually take directions from me. So that's, of course, our business. Anyway, back to crying business, in the sense that Gaur Govinda Maharaj was once asked by an intrepid reporter, what is the essence of Krishna consciousness? And of course, reporters just want a little phrase. They don't want a lengthy philosophical, they just want a concise little couple of sentences. What's the essence of Krishna consciousness? So Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he answered, you want the essence? The essence is that we have to cry, cry, cry for Krishna. So the reporter's writing this down. But that is actually, we really have to have that lolyam lalasamayi, I think it is. And please, Sanskrit speaking devotees, forgive my faulty pronunciations. But the essence is there, this intense greed. We know all these other qualities, they can actually, even jealousy can be dovetailed in Krishna's service. What to speak of Kam, Krodh, Lobh, lust, anger and greed, Mada, Moha and Matsarja, or lust, anger and greed, madness, illusion and envy. They can all be somehow or other, or jealousy. Perhaps not envy, but jealousy. So we just have to be very greedy for Krishna and not listen to the... somehow or other. And of course loud chanting is important. If our mind's just giving us a really... Go somewhere where we're not going to be disturbing the other devotees and, of course, chant loudly. I find that's very effective for me. Because otherwise, yes, this the endless chatter of the mind. Is that helpful, Trivikrama? Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I feel your audience is squeezing you enough for long enough. They should ask right over here. Ask your questions that from the depths of your heart you take as association.
Another question? Yes,
just furthering on that, the Sankirtan aspect of mind control. The individual pursuit of mind control and the collective approach to it. Definitely a profound, powerful experience to be together and taking that opportunity seriously to dive into Nam Sankirtan together is a very significantly and distinctly different experience than trying to pursue mind control in one's own backyard.
Absolutely. No, good point. And of course we all experience that, and it's just wonderful to be with enthusiastic kirtaniyas. That's actually our life and soul. So it's always wonderful to get the association of your good self. And Jasoda Dalal has visited us a couple of times in recent times at New Govardhan. And it's always wonderful to be in a kirtan with enthusiastic chanters and dancers. And absolutely, I mean, this is the Yuga Dharma. It's Lord Chaitanya has come. He's Krishna himself. He comes for different reasons. And one important reason we know is to give pleasure to his devotees, to perform these wonderful pastimes. For example, travelling to South India to deliver all of his associates who are his devotees in South India. And what did Lord Chaitanya do while he was in South India? He simply went from one holy place to another, gathering up all of his eternal associates, and together they would form Harinam Sankirtan. And he was attracting hundreds and thousands of personalities. And similarly going all the way to North India. And everywhere the Lord went, everyone was attracted as he inaugurated the Yuga Dharma, the religion for the age, congregational chanting and dancing. And there's no more powerful experience, as you say. Of course, other reasons, internal reasons are there. In his mood as Srimati Radharani, trying to understand, or mood of Krishna trying to understand how it is that Srimati Radharani loves me so much. I have to actually take this particular incarnation to experience that, which he did. So, and giving pleasure, innumerable pleasure, so much so that we relish such wonderful biographies as Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat, which describe the wonderful pastimes of the Lord as he did spread his Sankirtan movement, and how everyone drowned in that ocean. There's a beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. We've never committed it to memory, but it ends with the words Gaura Rasa of each line. And Vrindavan Das Thakur, he's lamenting that how is it that everyone on the planet is drowning in this inundation, this flood of love of Godhead, and I'm so unfortunate that no droplets have actually fallen on my head. So he's taking the role of a ordinary conditioned soul, even though he's the most exalted personality. But this is a fact, actually, and we see that, and we can, how this wonderful Sankirtan movement is just spreading steadily. It's just like pure things are very attractive. When Prabhupada came to New Vrindavan for the first time in 1969, he was offered pure cow's milk from the cow called Kalindi. And Prabhupada, as he drank that pure cow's milk, he said, I've not tasted milk like this for 50 years. Because in India, everyone knows, very hard to get pure cow's milk. The cow's milk's watered down, or it's buffalo milk is added to it. So anything very pure is very attractive, because Krishna is, of course, Pavitram. He's the supreme pure. So his movement of congregational chanting is extremely pure and attractive. And we should never think we know better than Krishna. We should never try and create something. Krishna's given the Harinam Sankirtan process for this age of Kali. It's very powerful. And if we immerse ourselves, dive into it with great enthusiasm, throw off our false bodily misidentification that we are a certain body, and just immerse ourselves, then we actually become free of that bodily concept of life, that ahankara, false ego, which is trapping us in this body. So Krishna's brought us, he's come, he's inaugurated it as a young man, Mahaprabhu, once the proud scholar of Nadia, the most aristocratic, divine personality, the son of Jagannath Mishra, born in elevated Saraswat Brahmin family, the greatest of all Pandits of Nadia, seat of learning, but then going to Gaya, ostensibly to perform the Pinda ceremony for his departed father, but meeting again Srila Ishwarapuri, taking initiation to the holy names of Krishna from him and coming back a transformed personality, and as a young 16 or 17-year-old youth beginning the Sankirtan movement. So influential that when the Qazi, of course, broke the sacred Madanga and ordered the cessation, and that was actually just the nocturnal kirtans which were going on in the house of Srivas Thakur. Hadn't actually gone on the streets yet, but people were starting to complain that every night there is these nocturnal kirtans all night in the house of Srivas Thakur, Srivas Angam. It's causing some disturbance, we can't sleep. And so the Qazi, being the Mohammedan magistrate of the district of Nadia, he forbade, and of course Mahaprabhu then manifest his potency as the Supreme Lord and ordered hundreds of thousands of people with torches and madangas to march on the house of the Qazi. And the rest is history. So we better stop here. But thank you all very much. Wonderful to be here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.